Surprise. We're live.
Oh no.
40
Oh no, you didn't
seconds
tell us.
early. Hello, everyone, and every single person who will watch forever here on out. We're back.
Back.
I am a mother now. Yay.
Yay.
And surprisingly, not as tired as everybody told me I would be.
I mean, Kelsey, it's been a couple months.
But
It's not like it ever stops.
Yeah.
yeah, but like I think like for someone who used to wake up at like 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody had faith in me that I would not be exhausted every day. So
Well, I mean, they didn't account for your absolute vindictiveness to get to prove them wrong.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're still doing stuff with, books." And it's like, no, you don't understand how bored I am.
Your child sleeps good though, right?
And yeah, Angel, honestly, like I really can't
Yeah.
complain. Like
Mhm.
I got very lucky. I think the Lord was like, this girl, she wakes up at 4 p.m. She needs.
Keeps getting later.
Once I went to bed and I woke up and my sister came back home from school.
Wow. That's impressive,
That was
Kelsey.
when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Hi.
Hey, Megs.
Alrighty, let's talk about our first book of the year.
Star Wars Outlaws. Ubisoft's own Star Wars Outlaws.
I needed to do that.
Listen,
I have to represent.
Thank you. I haven't seen it in so long. The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I'm very excited to talk about this. Mostly because, well, first of all, I just enjoy talking to you guys, but because I really love N.K. Jemisin, so I'm
Okay.
curious what you guys thought about this, and then we could talk about because I've read multiple books from her, so maybe like you guys haven't, or you read the okay, you didn't
No,
read anything.
that's the only
No.
thing I've read.
Okay, that's it. So then we could maybe talk about setting expectations forward for her next books, because I do think that this one was a little bit different, and I'll get into why. But who wants to give a synopsis?
Bobby.
Okay.
Justin just turned around and pointed at me at my desk and said, "You talk." So, I mean, the premise of the book is pretty simple. I would say, although a little bit odd if you're not reading the book, right? Which is that, basically in this world, every city, at some point comes alive, which means there becomes like a living person who is the avatar of the city. And there are other cities like Hong Kong or Sao Paulo or whatever that have avatars. And this one is about New York coming alive. And because New York obviously has 5 boroughs, there are 5 avatars that all have to come together to help kind of save it from this invading presence, this sort of Lovecraftian creature from a void that wants to basically wipe out New York and sort of cause a cataclysm that will basically end the universe. And these 5 people who all from different boroughs or even from outside of New York, or maybe there for the first time, have to come together and find the sort of primary avatar of New York and all come together and fight this monster, basically.
Yeah. One borough famously not included.
Well, yes.
I was quite shocked, I have to say. Because the only thing I know about Staten Island is that Angelina from Jersey Shore is from trash. That's the only thing I know about Staten Island.
It's really the only thing you need to know about Staten Island.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason,
Well,
Kelsey.
just that's the purpose of her whole arc in the book, is that they're always bullied. So let's be nice to them, because maybe they would have helped save New York earlier.
Maybe if they weren't also
she's
a
not
racist
actually,
fucks.
yeah, she's not actually bullied by anyone
Yeah.
other than other people who live on Staten Island.
I'm saying Staten Island. She gets a bad rep.
Yeah.
But this one, she was actually bad.
There's a
We'll get
reason why
into
it gets a
Yeah,
bad
we'll
rep,
get-
Kelsey. There's a reason why it's written like this by someone who lives in New York City.
I feel like there was a part of me that was like, I wonder like what Montreal would be like. First of all, my neighborhood, it would be an Italian accent, like 1000%. And I was just curious, and I'd be like who would be included in like my little, if I had to create.
But
a
you'd only have
Montreal?
one avatar. You don't have boroughs, right? You have neighborhoods. But that doesn't count.
I guess you're right.
According to this book, it's only happened over twice where there's been multiple
Yeah.
like avatars. London
No, I guess.
and New York. So you'd have one annoying French person. That's the
Even
avatar.
worse.
Where you're sitting.
Yeah, that's pretty much should be it.
Ugh. me and Paris. We would
It's all right.
be the annoying French.
If Long Island was included, we'd have a half Italian, half Irish person wearing like a backwards red Yankees hat and a tank top.
Like, wouldn't that have been great?
I would have felt so represented.
I was very representative that it happened.
So I need to know. I'm so excited to know your ratings.
Okay.
Because I feel like it could have went either way with you guys. Because you're New Yorkers specifically. And I just feel like there's more stakes in this.
The stakes are very high.
The stakes are high.
Because we're from New York.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it took place in Montreal, like I would be so nitpicky.
We did read a book though that was all about Montreal.
Yeah, and I did like it because I felt like it was very true.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, go.
I mean, I can't say anything bad about the book from the New York bona fides. Jemison obviously knows New York very, very well. I would say this book for me is like a 3.5 star book. There are things I really liked about it, and there were sections of the book where I was really into it. But I think we talked about, I don't remember which other books we talked about this with, but there just felt like a little bit of you're kind of saying the same thing over and over and over again, and you can just skip some of this stuff and just get to the events, and so that's kind of what dinged it for me. Was just it felt like I could skip pages and I would be okay. That's what it felt like sometimes to me when I was reading through this book. So that's where I am with it.
Justin?
I struggled with this book really hard for 60% of it. I wasn't looking forward to picking it up and getting back into it every time I picked it up.
I'm sure.
I settled on, I will give it 3 stars. It comes together at the end. But like I said, it felt like, I'm trying to think of another book we read like this, where the concept was pretty simple, like Bobby said, right? But it felt like we were taking forever to get there.
Yeah.
It felt very wordy.
Yes.
And I realize a lot of what it's trying to say is important stuff, but you could only get hit over the head with that so many times before it starts to feel like Bobby said, like, okay, we're saying the same things over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, I really thought you were gonna come in here and be the 5-star lover of this book. I was this is Justin's
premise.
book.
Yeah,
I was
the
like,
book is
he would
very
love
cool.
this.
And when it gets going and the stakes actually are laid out on the table and we get more insight as to what this battle actually is and the history of these battles.
Yeah.
I was very into all of that. It was very wordy.
Kelsey, can I interrupt for just a moment?
Yeah.
Justin, did you turn your mic up by accident? Because
No,
all of a sudden you got very loud all of a sudden.
No,
right?
I tried to lower it because I'm like bouncing back and I hear myself.
Yeah. You got really loud. You were like fine, and all of a sudden it went like spiked crazy loud. I don't know what happened.
How about this?
That's good. You sound good.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's great.
Don't touch it anymore.
Yeah.
I kept hearing myself.
Oh, so you were trying to turn it down, but you turned it the wrong way. I got you. I see what you're saying. Sorry, Kelsey, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that you're looking at my first 5-star of the year. I loved it. I do see that there are issues with it, like especially I think the ending where the pacing got really fast, and I think there's some things that were created for convenience. But I still had, I think, the funnest time reading this year. And I've had a lot of like 3 stars. So I think compared to like, maybe this is perhaps like in the moment because I've had such a shit end of like the last year where it was just constant 3 stars. And then this beginning of the year, I was reading a lot of average books. I think like this stood out a lot for me. So I give it 5 stars. I was enjoying it, eating it up. I bought the second book right away. Did I read it? No, but that's a story for another day. But I ate it up. It was delicious.
Like
a little snacky poo.
Yeah, like cities. Delicious.
Yeah. I was like the monster.
The monster, the woman in white.
Yeah, not that I want to be her, but
honestly, when they said her name, I was like, "That's it."
Yeah.
like that doesn't strike fear. Like I thought it would be this like longer eldritch thing, and it was just like Ryle.
But
Maybe that's on purpose though, because I think
maybe.
like the fear in this book is like like just gentrification, basically.
I
Which
don't know
is,
where you get that from, Kelsey. That's not hammered home at all anywhere in the book.
well, call me a little screw because I loved. I was gonna say I love to be hammered, but I do. I love to be wasted.
It's true. We've seen the pictures several times in text messages.
But I think that's also why I liked it too, and maybe I can also I could also argue that it's coming from maybe, not to get into politics, but a place of like despair living in Canada, 1 hour from the border, and knowing what's going on. Like maybe people do need things hammered home, and like N.K. Jemisin is just
When was this book written?
doing the Lord's work. I think
This
it was
book was written 2020, right?
Yeah.
So
it was right after
The last time. It was the
You
last
know
time we were
who's-
The last
we were
time,
going
yeah.
through this. No, it was still
I think-
during because
he who shall not be named.
he showed them names. Here's the thing. I mean, I agree with you, Kelsey. People do need to be hammered with this stuff sometimes, but I feel like the people who are going to read this book
Yeah,
are
I
not the
know,
people who
I
needed
know.
to be hammered in.
I know. She's
'cause
just speaking to like the choir.
Yeah.
Like, yay! Gentrification, we know it.
yeah. And again, I think like Justin was saying, I think the first few times, or even some of the times that those messages are delivered, I think they are very effective. And I think honestly they're more effective when she isn't trying to couch them in some sort of like metaphor. Like my favorite, I think, recurring sort of like storyline in the book was the Bronca stuff in like the gallery and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's just like straight out like, no, you're just dealing with people that we see on the news all the time,
Yeah.
and we've seen all this stuff happen, and it's just they're dealing with it head on as it is, and that stuff worked for me. But like when they're driving and like all the Starbucks are like monsters, I'm like, all right, like
Yeah.
come on.
I loved it. I was literally like, this is so clever.
I mean,
think
I will
think
respectfully
just need to
disagree
find
on the
happiness.
cleverness of it.
yeah.
I just need to find happiness. I think. Like I was just like,
You know-
I was eating it up.
I think for me, part of the issue is if we were living in a different timeline. Like obviously, this was written in a time where all of this stuff was starting to come to the forefront, and it's like this book was not escapism at all. Like it has a great premise, a great sci-fi presence, but it was just like it feels like I'm just reading the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it like to me that was a bit grating, and like
Yeah.
again, not in a bad way. It's like obviously this stuff needs to be talked about, but it's like it is so at the front of every single bit of our lives right now. It's like
Yeah.
I really just wanted to read a cool sci-fi book without sounding like an asshole. Like, does
Yeah.
anybody like understand what I'm trying to say? Like, it just
I absolutely get it. Yes.
it was heavy. It was heavy in a way that I wasn't expecting,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
or
I
maybe looking for at this moment.
I think every book is inherently political,
Of
like
course.
whether it's
Yeah.
one side or the other, right? And I think sometimes
I wonder what
Uh,
side this book is on. It's hard to tell, really.
I just realized, you guys, Robbie, you should change the color of your lighting.
Why? Because it's red.
Listen.
I'm not giving them the color red, Kelsey.
It's okay. The leftist party here in Canada is red,
Okay.
but I think like wanting to read for escapism without any sort of like political stuff is obviously like something that I think comes from like the privileged position, and like as like white people, obviously,
Of course.
and I think like when we pick up stuff that even might not be inherently like political just by the aspect of who has written it, and what like positions in society they hold, I think we would have been interesting maybe if, given the time that we're in now, if we read anything and we don't necessarily find something to relate to, right? Because often
Yeah.
like a lot of fantasy ends up being political,
Of course.
a lot of sci-fi, like just exploration of like other worlds is colonialism.
Yes.
So so it's like
It's
it's
true.
very
Yeah.
it's very interesting sometimes where it's like, what this is like hammering home, right? So maybe this is like the perfect example of like an escapist science fiction, but like any science fiction is inherently talking about like colonialism
Of course.
in a way.
Of course, but I will
Yeah.
defend Justin in this point, which is that this book is set in the place that we live.
Yeah, no, you listen, you guys.
It's about issues that Justin and I probably talk about every day as it is, you know. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, and again, I don't mind how political it is.
No,
like,
neither do I.
at all. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
No, I know. I was just.
it's just the constant like hammering home
Yeah.
of the points that she's making just gets in the way of the other part of the book, which is
Yeah.
I think a cool, like propulsive, interesting take on science fiction or fantasy or whatever, wherever you want to classify this, because it's sort of in that weird middle ground, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell why other white male who shall not be named loved this book so much, and their quotes are all over the book. Because
yeah, I know.
it's very much his style of fiction as well, you know, very American Gods, you
Yeah.
know, coded in many
100%.
ways.
And I think I'll bring up like her other series, which is the 5th season, so the Broken Earth trilogy. That one I think is actually an example of like stuff not being hammered home. So at its core, the 5th season is like a like climate fantasy science fiction. So it's in a world where there's constant like natural disasters happening, and there's a certain group of people in the society that are able to cause these natural disasters, and the seasons happen where like major natural disasters happen and like destroy the world. So there's at the same time that there's people that can control the natural disasters, there's also always a natural disaster that ends the earth. And so this is like the 5th iteration of this natural disaster. And so it's like at the same time it's discussing like obviously classism and racism in society, and then also this like climate, I'm sorry, I'm having mommy brain. What is it, the bad of
Climate change.
climate change? And it's also talking about climate change and how it's negatively affecting the
This
world.
baby's not affecting me at all.
Yeah.
I was like, what is the word that comes after climate? But yeah, so I think like that, I think N.K. Jemisin was writing that book with like the cleverness maybe that we're like looking for, and not the hardness that I think The City We Became has. And again, I do think it's because it's being written because people need to understand these things, but at the same time, like you said, like it's not for us three, you know, like like we're like, yeah, exactly, like
Yeah.
gentrification in Brooklyn, like we all understand what that
Yes,
is. Like
exactly.
even I don't even live there and I know that there's gentrification in Brooklyn.
Yes, there absolutely is. Yeah, I mean, but I will say that I like, you know, there are things that I really liked about the book. There are also things I didn't like about the book that have nothing to do with the like metaphorical bludgeoning that it gives you maybe throughout the book. You know, I think one of the things I didn't expect, which I'll talk about things I didn't like, but because I do want to talk about things I did like, is that I could feel about halfway through the book, I was like, oh, we're not getting a resolution to this story at the end of this book. Like we are totally setting up a series of books, which this is, and that disappointed me a little bit, only because like the books felt like somewhere in the middle, it sort of like switched gears from like, okay, we're going towards like all the people are gonna get together and then they're gonna fight this thing and they're either gonna win or they're gonna lose or whatever, to okay, we're gonna take a really long time to get them together, and we're gonna do a couple like similar scenes just to sort of like give us a little bit more time with them, but in the end, and then it's weird because then at the end, all of the action she like skips over. Like you don't see the you don't see the gorilla fight. You don't see like them wiping the woman in white out of New York. You don't get like anything except like it's like 4 sentences.
So, yeah, not even a paragraph.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't remember if it was during the live show or right before when we were talking about Staten Island, but it's like conveniently the friend that's been with them all the time that's from Jersey City is, oh, but the people from Jersey call themselves New Yorkers, and then bam, they're able to do it.
Yeah.
And
No.
like,
First of all, no.
No.
And no.
And I said, Kelsey, this was before we went live. This was before Justin got
yeah,
here.
okay.
I said it is insulting that Jersey gets to be part of New York and Long Island is
Long
like,
Island
oh, no,
does-
fuck Long Island. The whole
I
book.
literally was waiting for long because
The
like,
boroughs,
you were the only two people I know from New York, so I was like, for sure, Long Island.
Queens and Brooklyn are on Long Island.
They're on Long Island.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe it counts. But like, I totally get what you guys are saying. It's like when people here, like if they live in Laval, they'll say like, "Oh, they're from Montreal," like for convenience. It's like, no, you don't get to.
We
claim
have
our little
a New
island.
York and Jersey have a like not great love affair.
Yeah,
Because
it's the same thing
so
with us
it
in Laval.
makes no like yeah, I get it. You're across the river. It's not that far, but no. Like
Yeah, no.
Yeah, like
No.
I get it. It takes me 10 minutes to get to Laval, but like,
Yeah.
sorry, in the morning it takes you an hour to get onto the island. So please.
Also, the problem with that is just in the book sense is like they don't seed it anywhere previously.
no.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he's like, oh no, cities don't the actual city doesn't matter. And I'm like, but what you didn't say this before?
Yeah,
you know?
I think that
Did a throwaway line where it was just like the city
Yeah.
will accept whatever help it could get. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, all right, well,
Yeah.
and they're like, yeah,
sure.
she's been here the whole time helping us. It's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
her boss is.
Yeah.
Like if I was trapped in the freaking art
Yeah.
gallery with my boss, I guess
Yeah.
I would help.
The dynamic between Bronca and her was also very interesting. It was very motherly, but also with
Yeah.
like a undertone of something more. It
Yeah.
was
Well-
an interesting relationship.
Yeah.
Something with N.K. Jemisin is that she does well. The Broken Earth trilogy is surrounded by a motherly relationship with a daughter who's taken away from her. So I think N.K. Jemisin has an interesting relationship with womanly figures and then like daughter type of vibes. And I think also because Bronca is a lesbian, there's also an interesting dynamic there where like who knows what type of relationship was forming there, right? Because they didn't really
Yeah.
have time because they had to like save the world, and like
Yeah.
all of a sudden she became a city.
Yes.
And I wish there's a part of me that wishes that we didn't follow Manhattan as our first look into what the cities were, because I think if we followed who is it that knows exactly what's going on? Bronca?
Bronca.
Bronca's the one that
Brooklyn.
knows what's going on.
Okay, but Brooklyn also knows
she
that
knows a little bit, but not as.
Yeah.
But Bronca's the
Okay.
one who said she gets all the information like downloaded.
Yeah,
into
like
her head,
I wish
basically.
we followed her coming into understanding who she is, because I think it would have made for like an easier entry point into the book, whereas I find Manny's entry into becoming a city was incredibly confusing in comparison to the other avatars, because they seem to know. They're like, oh yeah, like I was a person before. Like Queens doesn't even forget who she was.
That's why I disagree though, because I didn't think the beginning of this book was strong at all.
Mhm.
And I only started to grip onto the book a little bit when we got to Manny, because Manny didn't know who he was. And I'm like, oh, the city erased this guy's existence.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he's struggling
the
just like
first-
he's struggling in a way that I'm struggling with
Yeah.
this book right
Mhm.
now. And
Okay.
like that helps grip me a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think amnesia trope like works either way. Like either you like it and it's a great entryway into like understanding the fantasy world and like being able to sort of info dump onto readers right away, so you don't have to worry about like slotting things in here and there for readers to pick up. You can kind of just give it all at once so that the reader understands. And I agree, because the first actual chapter we're following the New York like super avatar,
Mhm.
and then we go straight into Manny. So I think that that's where maybe for me the confusion was, because at first I was like, who is this person? And it was
Yeah.
only until like they brought up that there's the final super avatar that I was like, oh, okay, that's who it was at the beginning.
Yeah.
I
I
didn't
honestly think kind of starting with that is a mistake of,
Yeah.
of the book
I
a little
think
bit.
so as well.
I think it's much more interesting if you start with Manny and the city sort of like in turmoil. The Brooklyn Bridge the Williams Bridge is falling down. They don't know why. You know, this other
Yeah.
character is sort of looking for them, but we don't know who he is or why he's looking for them.
Like Bronca coming in and being able to say that, like the same way it happened, but have Bronca be the one to be like, there is someone looking there is like a final super avatar. Like it was because I was like, oh, that's who it was in the beginning.
Yeah.
But if you don't make that connection, like the first chapter, like you might think that it's Manny before before he has amnesia, which is what I initially
Oh, okay.
like.
Gotcha.
I initially
Yeah.
thought like, oh,
Okay.
Interesting.
he lost his like he
Lost his memory in the
His
lost
battle.
his memory in the battle, and now he's re-experiencing another like
Right.
octopusy creature. And I was just like, I'm like,
Yeah.
you just saw it.
I didn't
Yeah.
go
So I
that
was
way. I
very
didn't go that way, but I
yeah.
can see why you
Definitely
did.
can see that
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like in first person as well. So I was just like,
Mhm.
and then he forgets. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that's for me like the most confusing part of the book was definitely like the beginning part. And then I think once we got past like Manny's initial chapter, I was hooked completely.
What
Probably
happened to
because I
Manny's
forgot the
roommate, by the way? He never shows back up.
He's gonna probably show up in the sequel.
He must. I
Well,
guess.
the thing is that the sequel isn't necessarily following New York though. It's following
It's not going to follow up on the story of the woman in white owning Staten Island.
And Staten Island somehow moving further away from the city that no
Okay.
one's really noticed yet.
I will take this book and ding it a whole star if the sequel has nothing to do with what
Okay,
this
look,
book is
let's
saying.
read together. Even though the avatars of New York City have temporarily managed to stop the women in white from invading, the mysterious capital E enemy has more subtle powers at her disposal. Oh, it's not okay. I thought E was a new person. Never mind. A new candidate for mayor wielding the populist rhetoric of gentrification, xenophobia, and law and order may have what it takes to change the very nature of New York itself. In order to defeat him, the avatars will have to join together with the other great cities of the world to bring her down for good. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
I thought that they were joining like another city.
Gotcha.
I'm
to bring-
interested to learn more about these other cities. Like that
Mhm.
seems like a cool thing.
Yeah.
I especially wish they dug into the history of cities that didn't make it. Like I found all of that to be
Well, I think
super
it's implied that
fascinating.
it's like Atlantis.
Well, they
Atlantis.
talk about like
They talk about New Orleans,
and
yeah.
Port-au-Prince.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
those are real events that happen
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forgot.
You know,
about
so
that.
what are the other ones
Yeah.
that aren't like Atlantis? You know,
Yeah.
like
But I liked the explanation for Atlantis a lot. Like
Yeah.
it got housed so bad that
Mhm.
an entire reality just forgot that it ever existed, and
Yeah.
it got put into legend.
Mhm.
Like that was cool.
Cool.
I liked that part of it
and,
a
and it
lot.
made a lot of sense for her world building as well. Like I was
Yeah.
like, this is like a solid introduction into what could be otherwise, and makes sense with what she's explaining with New York, with Sao Paulo, and especially when she included like New Orleans and the hurricane and in Port-au-Prince as well. Like I was like, okay, this is like perfect.
Pompeii was the other.
Yeah,
Pompeii,
oh,
that's what they talk
Pompeii,
about. And
that's it.
Sodom and Gomorrah they talked about as
Yes,
well.
okay, yeah. Yeah.
All super interesting stuff. You know, I
Yeah.
just think like I said, I think for me, I feel too much like I'm reading like the setup to a bigger story sometimes in this book. And it's like, I would like to see him have using more powers. I'd like to see more like, you know, less of them just like running away and huddled in a room.
In the art gallery. We
In the
spent
art gallery?
so much time in the
Yeah.
art gallery.
Lots
That's
of them in
true.
the
We
art
did spend a
gallery,
lot of time.
you
I
know?
wonder if that's purposeful though, right? Because the art gallery is this place that is actively working against gentrification and white supremacy and like raising voices and art of people of color, right? So I wonder if the art gallery is sort of perpetuated as this like safe space that can't really be.
But then it gets destroyed.
Yeah.
Or not get destroyed, it gets taken over by the
No, for
the
sure. But
stock.
I'm wondering if
or
like in the
whatever.
beginning, because they're actively fighting against it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
the Bronca stuff for the most part is the stuff I like the most in
It was
the
the
book.
most it was the part of the book where it gradually kept grabbing me a little bit more and like
Yeah.
pulling me along into the story, is because it all felt like something I could easily follow.
Yeah. And it had like that mix of like supernatural and
real life.
real life
Yeah.
stakes that made it, and like because so like her like battle just for like with the politics of the art gallery was also interesting on top of like the other stuff that was happening, where everybody else is sort of just everyone else is sort of like transitory, right? Everybody else is like moving all the time. It's why I thought the first scene with Queens was also really good, because you get this idea of like, I like that scene, like how she like teleports through the building and like, you know, saves them from the pool or whatever. I thought that was cool. And I liked like her aunt, like sort of being like, yeah, don't you think this is weird? She's like, honey, no. like, you know,
This
basically
is New York City.
yeah, but also just like, well, you know, I come from a culture that doesn't fear its past, so like we talk about this stuff and everything, you know, all the time. I liked that stuff because it had a sense of place and personality, and then after that, they're just kind of on the move again, or just in Bronca's office, you know, with Hong Kong sort of like yelling at them because they don't know. I was like, I don't need another paragraph about how they didn't know something. Obviously, they don't know. Just tell them.
And I think that could have been something that was more explored, right? Because like it seems as though Hong Kong was really confused that they didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Like he was like, "What do you mean?" And so I wonder if like,
which shouldn't be that to her own world building shouldn't be that surprising since there's only been one other city where there were multiple avatars. Also, what are they getting eaten? What
they didn't get eaten though.
They
well,
didn't
they didn't
get
get
eaten.
eaten, but
No.
they were
But nobody-
supposed to. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what they thought because that's what they think happened in London, right? That's the whole thing. It's
And
like,
it could be that maybe the avatar in London is just like a piece of shit.
It's like,
you know?
oh, I get my belly. That was more Australian.
That was way more Australian.
I'm sorry.
Megs, if you're
I wish
here,
we
we
could do-
apologize.
Yeah. I wish we could.
I don't
do
apologize. That was a
accents.
fantastic Australian accent.
Oi, get in my belly.
That was more British, to be fair.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
go. Yeah.
Speaking of people who shall not be named, I spent a lot of my life trying to imagine what I would sound like if I had a British accent for unrelated reasons.
Okay.
I think we should maybe talk about the weaker characters I found was Staten Island. I think Staten Island, for the purpose of the book, like I don't know if she was important.
I mean, she's very functionally important to the
She's
plot of the
very
book.
yeah.
But I'm saying like aside from that, like that's what I mean. Like I struggle.
Her story's definitely not over.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I guess so. It's because I struggle to understand the decision of why not make the woman in white. Well, I guess because she wins over Staten Island.
Yeah.
Staten Island is a sheltered baby, just like a complete sheltered baby, and is too afraid to walk out of her own shadow, and without really realizing it, has absorbed her father's prejudices. And so when people of color are on her front step, she's of course going to go with the white woman.
Yeah.
Even though the white woman, every ounce of her body is telling her that the white woman is bad. She's just like, well, no, obviously she seems nice enough, so I'm going to go with her.
Yeah.
Like the entire car ride to the library, she's literally 1 second away from being eaten and is just willfully ignorant of it.
By that plop monster or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's because like maybe I was hoping for some sort of like remorse from Staten Island and like her realizing what
And that's
was
for
up.
the next book, I would assume.
Yeah.
Kelsey.
Maybe
That's what I mean by feeling
Maybe
emotional.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there because they foreshadow it where there's like a 2-sentence thing or a 1-sentence thing where she's like, much later she'll look back at this conversation and realize, I forget what it is, X or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay, I was hoping this would be by the end of the book, but no.
I think it's also because I had thought that the second book was only slightly related to the first book. I was sort of like accepting of things as like unfinished, and so I was sort of like, well, Staten Island, like who cares? Like she could have just not been included. Or like maybe there was a turnaround in her behavior, but I think that's the point, right? Like I think once like
also,
some
I
people
know
just
so many fucking people.
Yeah, some people just can't be like they might understand that they might be in the wrong, but they're just not cognizant enough.
Yeah. Well,
The
I
weird
texted
thing is
both
they
of
did
you.
it. They did it. Go ahead, Bobby. You go
ahead,
first.
Justin. No.
They did the one of the things that annoyed me was we did the same story with her twice.
Yes.
Yeah.
San Paulo goes there and is like, get in the car, and she's like, okay. And then the woman in white stops them. And then the other Burroughs go there, and the exact same thing happens.
Yeah.
We did the same thing twice.
But I think the reason for that though is because it's giving white people a chance, more chances than not to fix their prejudices and stuff. And like I think especially white women are given a lot of like um graces to change the way that they think. There's an interesting book that I read in 2020 which was called like White Fragility, and it's about how like white people are very often using like their own ignorance as a way to like guilt other people to like feel bad for them. So it's like it's not that I'm a bad person. Like I did believe Sao Paulo, and I was going to go and be a good person, but I had to learn it again. And it's like it's not that I really like the woman in white, but I feel like she has a point, and it's using like our stupidity like to give us more chances so that we can keep making mistakes. And it comes from an idea that like we just don't we just deserve more chances to make mistakes, and then using our fragility to like shield us. And a lot of this discussion happens with like in the book they bring up a lot of like white women tears, and how like women will white women will cry, or for example like in conversations because they feel bad, but they had these negative ideas from the get-go. It's just that now they're being called out on it, so now they cry, kind of
Mm.
thing. And like that's what the author was like her argument sort of was in that book. And I think that maybe that's the point with Staten Island, is that she keeps getting chances and she keeps fucking up.
I think thematically you're absolutely right. I don't think that makes it an engaging
No,
story device.
no. I'm like I just think
No,
that
I
that's
get
what
what you
N.K.
mean for
Jemisin was
sure.
doing.
Yes,
Yeah,
no, I totally understand.
because she's the only white avatar.
She is the
Yes.
only white
Yeah.
avatar. Yes. I texted both of you separately because I was listening. I did. I usually do.
The
I read
audiobook
this
was so good.
in like
I just
four
have to
separate
point
ways,
that
which
out.
was I read this physical library book. I had the Kindle library edition, and I also had the like the Libby audiobook. And so I would like flip back and forth depending on my situation, what I was doing, and what the narrator, her like Staten Island, New York accent was chillingly real. I was like,
I can't
know
think of what Staten Island sounds like.
if you heard it, you would know. I mean, it's not much different than the way very Italian people here sound,
Okay.
Justin. But you know, it was chillingly real, and the way that she was talking was disturbing in that way. But I think, no, I mean, I actually, her chapters were interesting to me because you get a peek more into the quote unquote the enemy's like perspective, right?
Yeah.
And how she operates.
And
And I liked that part of it, you know, quite a bit. She was very frustrating, obviously, and very, you know, and the kind of person who makes me want to strangle them. But I think that those chapters were nice breakups, I think, between the other ones, which all kind of had the same direction and thrust. And this one sort of had like
Yeah.
it was like a change up a little bit.
Yeah, and I also want to add as well, just keeping up with like N.K. Jemison's theme of like white fragility. The woman in white also uses something that is like female specific, which is like rape and sexual harassment, and how now she had this bad thing happen to her, right? So she was getting harassed by like that junior cop or whatever,
Mhm.
ACAB, and the you know she's experiencing a scary situation, and she's able to like use the power that's given to her by the woman in white to like erase what happened, and be able to like ruin the yard and like
No, that's not the woman in white's power.
That's her
or
power.
her
That's her
power.
power. That's her
Yeah, but the
Staten
woman
Island power.
I mean, sorry, let me rephrase. The woman in white uses her power to like infiltrate people's brains, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
she's causing this guy
Mhm.
to sexually harass Staten Island,
Mhm.
and highlight his misogyny. And when women don't have like an intersectionality in their feminism, this is what happens, right? So it's like this bad thing happened to me because of misogyny. And therefore, this is all I'm worried about. And now I have this power, and the woman in white understands me. And so now I'm going to go on to this side without really taking into consideration the larger issue, which at the point of this book is New York and New York being taken over. But obviously, the larger issue is intersectionality and understanding that feminism has a wide variety of things under an umbrella that we need to look at, and not just the way that you feel in a given situation as a white woman, because you don't have to deal with like what's happening to New York, which is the gentrification and poverty and classism and all of that, and the Starbucks running around.
Starbucks running around as different monsters.
Poor
I can tell that
Starbucks.
MK Jemisin really does not like Staten Island.
Starbucks.
I'll tell you.
Yeah. Or Starbucks.
Or Starbucks. Hates both of those things.
Well,
Dunkin' Donuts didn't get shouted. Well, Dunkin' Donuts got shouted out, but that didn't become a monster.
It did become a monster.
Yeah. Well, I think because Starbucks, it's like, isn't like I don't know, the most famous joke I've ever heard about Starbucks is that in America, there's a Starbucks at every corner.
Yes, there's a lot of Starbucks in New York City. A lot of Starbucks in New York City. But it's also, I think it's like, again, this is part of I just feel like could have been more clever. The like Starbucks as focus of the gentrification, like Amity is like 25 years old at this point. You know what I mean? It's like there's just other things that we could be doing a little more clever there. But I will say there are things I like. I like I mentioned, Bronca I thought is a really good character, and I really liked those scenes where she's interacting with Woman White as like that rich sort of person, you know, representing those artists, the Strawberry Man Bun and all those other people.
Yeah, I like that scene as well. I was like,
and then when she's in the gallery and she kind of fights her off, I thought that stuff was also good. You know, I think that she's got a nice story and arc. You know, I think I like the scene where Brooklyn like pushes, like does the same thing at like her houses or whatever. But, you know, I feel like we're almost always seeing Brooklyn through another character's perspective other than really that moment where she's doing that. So I don't really ever feel like I have a closeness or understanding of her other than she's a politician now and she used to be a rapper. Like that's really what I get. And she's Brooklyn, so she's tough, right? That's the kind of like idea that I get from it. Yeah. And it's the same thing with Queens. We get that one scene with Queens where we're kind of like in her perspective when she saves those people. But other than that, it's really Bronca and Manny are the two people that we're really with. We honestly spend more time in San Paulo's perspective than we spend in
Queens'
perspective or really Brooklyn's perspective.
Yeah.
Really. So, you know, I feel like that shortchanges their characters a little bit because there is stuff in the book where, you know, her and Manny sort of have like an interesting like relationship with each other, but except for like one or two scenes, we don't really get much development between them, right? Where they kind of, she doesn't trust him, but she kind of does. And all I can really perceive it from is Manny's perspective, right? So that's, I'm not really even
and Manny doesn't, he's confused about everything.
He's confused about everything.
Yeah.
Literally everything.
But I did like that idea of like, he was somebody who was not very nice, you know, in his past. And this sort of like personification of New York, and even though it's a little bit on the nose, I appreciate, which is like, he's coming to New York to be a different person, and he ends up becoming a totally different person, right?
And
he actually gets that chance to do it, right? And he's all, you know, you can't really tell what ethnicity or race he is because everything is just so melded together. It's I like that sort of symbolism that she's doing, and I like the idea that he is like a nasty person in his past, but you don't really know what he's doing or how or why. You kind of just guess.
It just seems like he was a violent person.
It does, but
because
I also don't think it's confirmed. Like they're just like, he looks scary.
But he even says to himself,
he
though,
says
like,
that
I'm used to hurting people. I'm used to threatening people.
Yeah.
You know, they say
but also that he was, whoever he was before was okay rooming with a trans roommate. So couldn't have been that bad, but he had some sort of violent pasts. That's what we get anyway.
We all have to do things.
Yeah. But not, and then I was thinking, was he like, you know, doing something like, you know, illegal or whatever, but then at the end, the Avatar of New York calls him like an Ivy League.
But that's why, like, I think I feel like maybe he has done violent things, but I don't know if it's like actually what we're thinking. And I wonder if this is N.K. Jemisin also playing on like people not knowing others and like making assumptions based on like the way people look and like the race that they are.
But he himself, though, I would say I agree with you, but his internal monologue is a lot like some reason
maybe
I'm
he
good
was
at
a
this.
Boxer.
I don't know. I think maybe he was just like a nasty person is what it seemed like. And maybe he did some stuff like the Ivy League thing kind of points me towards maybe he was a little bit like frat boy.
Yeah, that's what I was
like. That was
well.
what got me at that point. Because obviously he has money too, right? He has money. But he also says he hurt people for money. So I don't know what that is. Like what, you know, and maybe we'll find, maybe the next book you find out what Manny's.
You don't think he's like a heavy, right? For like pushing drugs or anything like that? Like
no.
he's not described that way.
No, he's not described that way at all. You know, because it seems like because it also seems like he's more cerebrally violent even than he is physically violent, because they mention a couple times how he seems comfortable using like what seem like placid threats that have like an underlying realness to them to get his way, like a sort of like nasty charm even so that points me more towards like
I think he was probably just a frat boy.
rich frat boy
Yeah.
asshole, you know.
He has no problem laying out the situation for Queens when they find out that, you know, we're erasing trillions of lives if we go through with this, or, you know, when a city is born, you know, he's the one that just drops like, would you rather everyone you love die?
Yeah, exactly.
Like very real.
Yeah.
I also go ahead, Kelsey.
No, go, because I think it's another point.
Well, I was just going to go with the whole like cities becoming different people, is that San Paulo also has a kind of shady past, because the woman in white throws the word assault at him, and you can see him like kind of like, you know, stiffen up to it. And it's just, you know, to me, it was just another interesting way that you can become somebody different.
And I think also like Manny's willingness to be eaten as well. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, he wants to be eaten, Kelsey.
Yeah,
he really wants it.
There's a part of me that's like, okay, what's up with that? Like, why? And I don't know if it's because like he really came like this. It's this idea of like coming to New York and like really just wanting like a fresh start, and like you just become a completely different person. And I wonder if like that's maybe the lore of it. Is that
I think that's what it is.
Perhaps he had like such a negative past that he's like, no, I would love to be eaten by New York, and like, you know, like every 20-year-old's dream, like you just want to move to New York and like be
get
a
eaten.
little hipster, you know.
Get eaten.
Yeah. I don't want to do the live show too long tonight. So my other question for you guys is, what do you think the novel maybe could have done to make you have enjoyed it way more?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I think a lot of it is just streamlining a little bit of those, what I feel like are repeated sort of scenes that convey the same information a few times. There's just a thing that she does, which again, it's a personal bugaboo of mine, but it's like, I as the reader have already seen and absorbed this fact. I do not need a scene where the characters are then telling that fact to another character in full detail. And that happens a couple of times in this book, and it's like, you could just say, we caught her up on everything, you know, or whatever. And so I guess I felt a lot of times I was ahead of the characters in knowledge a lot of the time. And so I spent a lot of time being like, okay, like I get it. Like they're going to catch up. And then let me just get to the point where they've now caught up where I am, so that we can progress on with the story. That was a big part of me. And also I just kind of wish that the book felt more complete, even though it's part of a series. You know, like when you read something like the first Mistborn book, right? It's part of a series, obviously, but it has a complete arc and story within it, and but then has something that leads you to the next chapter, right? The next installment. This is just sort of like, okay, I feel like we're in the middle of a 800-page book instead of at the end of a 400-page book, is sort of what it feels like to me in that moment.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I'd be curious when you guys eventually, if you want to, read the Broken Earth trilogy, because she's won Hugo's for that, because the intricacy of the plot is so much more developed than it is in here, and the like subtleness of her themes is also much better done there. And this is her first release after the Broken Earth trilogy, so I'm curious if, due to the depth of all of that, and like just how overall, like, even though I gave this book 5 stars, overall that trilogy is a lot more like better than this one. I'm wondering if like for this one she just wanted to write like a fun action story, and she was just like, I am gonna make sure my themes are driven home, and I just want to have fun writing this, over like the Broken Earth trilogy, which is much more like intricate plot with intricate dynamics.
Possibly. Yeah.
Justin, do you have any?
I felt that the book was very chaotic in the beginning, like chaotic in a way that it was almost hard to follow. And if that was cleaned up a bit more, I think I could have been gripped a little bit more into the story sooner than I was. Because like I said, it took like 65-70% through the book where I was just like, oh, okay, now I'm enjoying reading this. Because if it was not for the book club, I probably would have just put it down and moved away from it. So, that would pretty much be it for me. It's just a little bit less structure is maybe not the right word, but I just feel like this book did not flow great in the beginning.
There's a part of me that also I'm curious if like she sort of rushed to both write and publish this to be written at the tail end of Donald Trump's first presidency. I'm curious if like that was the reason, and then it was written right after and wanting to be published during 2020, because 2020 is such a like pivotal like year. I'm curious like when this was published.
Well, she says that she wanted to visit both the cities, Hong Kong and Sao Paulo, or during the writing of this book, and was not able to. So that means that my guess is there were restrictions on traveling.
Yeah,
so that was in the height of COVID.
March 20th, 2020, and that's when was not allowed to go to work.
Yeah, no, like that's right. The pandemic. This launched like right when we were all getting locked down.
So it's like there's not there. I think there's just a part of me that I feel like this was written to be published at the tail end of Donald Trump's presidency. Like I really think that that's what the main.
I mean, obviously, it was probably what drove her to write this story for sure. And I will say this, to not leave it on
so hounding of the themes as well. Like I
yes,
think
100%.
I think there's an element of frustration where it's like I cannot believe that I have to explain to people that like this gentrification is bad and racism is bad and white men don't deserve to be in a gallery just because they want to be. Like I think that maybe there's an element. It's so simple in its writing, perhaps. For that element, like writing, like people are so dumb. Like that's how I would feel if I was writing this.
And she's hurt by the fact that things have just gotten dumber since then, and so it's just like that's a part of it. I don't want to leave it totally negative. I'll say this: it's a book all about New York, and she obviously knows and understands New York really, really well. And there are some things in here, in certain areas of New York that I'm very familiar with, where I'm like, wow, this feels like exactly what it feels like to be in this place, or to experience this thing, or to take this mode of transportation, or to go, whatever. So I really love it when, any piece of media is able to capture a place in that way. And this really does, I think, really, really well. And that I really appreciated about it. For sure.
I love New York too. So I think a lot of people love New York, and I think a lot of people idolize New York as well as like the perfect city. And I think that maybe that's also helping elevate the book as well, because people, even if they're not from New York, know New York very well, and can imagine themselves within this story and imagine themselves as Manny. I think is like also another like element. Plus for Manny, basically. Yeah,
absolutely. But it's funny, as someone who's from this area, like at the end when she's explaining, like, well, Brighton Beach is right near Coney Island, I was like, I know.
I was like,
explanation. I know that's my name, but I was like, I get it. I know.
And it was funny to like imagine myself in the boroughs as well, being like, I went to Brooklyn the last time I was.
Yeah,
we wouldn't know. We weren't invited.
We wouldn't know, Kelsey. We wouldn't know.
We wouldn't know.
I know. I'm sorry. I just love New York so much. I have to take my time.
Not your friends who live in New York.
Not your friends who live in New York. Wild.
No, but I spent a lot of time on Staten Island when I used to film weddings, and we used to do a lot of weddings on Staten Island, and it is exactly how they describe it for the most part.
Well, yeah, don't Italians do big weddings all over the world?
Yes. So many big. I will just share quickly, especially people from Staten Island. Often they're not originally from Staten Island. Often like, oh, the groom's from Brooklyn or the groom's from Queens. So what they'll do is like the bride will get ready on Staten Island, and then you have to drive to Queens or Brooklyn for the church, and then often you have to either drive back to Staten Island or drive to New Jersey
Yeah.
for the reception.
Okay, so I see Italians all across North America are exactly the same.
And let me tell you, on a Friday at like 4:00 in New York,
I can't
that's a
imagine.
nightmare.
I felt nauseous when they were like, "We're gonna drive to Staten Island."
Oh, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
no.
No.
It's
You know how much it costs to go to Staten Island?
It's so annoying. They're just
Yeah.
going through all the ways they were going. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Stay off the Belt Parkway.
See, like these are little things that, like, I think if the book was written in Montreal, like I don't
you'd pick
feel
up
like
more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would pick up more, but I think I can pick up like what you guys are saying because I
Yeah.
think more people have been to New York and more people can see themselves in New York. Whereas like this story, I don't think would necessarily work in even Canada's biggest city, which is Toronto. I don't think enough people can see themselves in Toronto
Mhm.
unless they're Canadians. Like I know
Right.
Toronto very well,
Yeah.
but that's because it's only like 5.5 hours away from me,
Yeah.
and so is New York,
Mhm.
right? And like I just think like New York is a bigger city. Like I don't even see this story working well in Los Angeles. I don't think people know Los Angeles
No.
as well as like people know
It
New
would take them
York.
so long to find the other parts. Are you kidding me?
Like
But
we
it
know
would work
that.
structurally though, because Los Angeles really is like 5 towns
Yeah.
Yes.
bolted together, so it would
Yes.
actually work thematically very well.
I think it would still work thematically, but I don't think
Yeah.
like the heart of it and
no.
understanding the story works as well as it does because it's set in New York.
Well, because
like-
I think other than people who live in a giant metropolitan city, I think most people, and I'm not saying I'm not trying to say this as someone who lives near New York. This
No, you're
is what it is.
generalizing.
Generalizing. When they picture city in their mind,
It's
they're
New York.
picturing something that looks like
Yeah.
New York City, even if it's not exactly New York City, right?
Yeah.
Unless you live in like Hong Kong or you live in one of
Yeah.
these places that
Like,
you live in
yeah,
a
like-
giant metropolis, you know?
Exactly. Like living in a city, I understand like the whole idea of it, right? Like different like we don't have boroughs here. We have definitely like distinct neighborhoods though.
Mhm.
Like if you live in one neighborhood, you are not the same as someone who lives in another neighborhood that's like a 10-minute drive. Like our neighborhoods are very distinct here. And I could almost like not to say we're like Tokyo, but like Tokyo in a sense has like very distinct neighborhoods with
Yeah.
distinct architecture, and Montreal is very much like that as well.
Yeah.
And then you have like the cities around us that want to be Montreal, but they're not.
Spoken
Like Jersey.
True Quebecois.
Well, don't even Quebecois compared to the rest of the country is another argument.
Yeah. But the thing about New York too is though it's like yes, it has these different boroughs which are all very distinct. But within each borough, it's also like you're
Exactly.
saying,
Yeah.
like there's like very distinct, very separate neighborhoods that are all very different from one another. That people from one part of Manhattan don't feel like the people from another part of Manhattan are the same people either.
Mhm.
And I think this book does a good job of expressing that in a lot of ways, and in the idea that like these 4 people are often fighting all the time. They're constantly fighting and bickering, and they're getting into fights when maybe they
Yeah.
shouldn't, and they have this bigger enemy, but they're kind of bickering with each other in a lot of ways. And I think that it does a good job of expressing what New York is like, right? Which is it's this idea of like it's all these completely different people
Yeah.
shoved into the smallest place possible, and they've got to figure out how to live together, right?
I think
yeah.
I think also like it's a distinct thing as well, where like to outside people, like every person in a borough would be like, yeah, I'm from New York,
Mhm.
but like within New York, you're like, no, I'm from Brooklyn. Like it's a
absolutely,
specific
yes.
feeling, like which I don't think we necessarily do here. Like I
Right.
don't think we. Like I will never say like I could never live in the plateau. Like I live in Saint Leonard. Like
Don't
like,
dox
no, I
yourself, Kelsey.
sorry, yeah. Whatever. People don't need to know where I actually live. Okay. Unless
Alright.
you guys have anything else to talk about,
No.
we could talk about the next
Oh,
book that
yeah.
we're gonna read.
Justin's pick.
Crap.
I could pull it up.
this
if
one
you
right
want.
here.
Please. Thank you, Bobby. Can you read the synopsis for me? I don't have it right in front of me.
Oh, okay. Well, you want to say the title of it?
It is Death of the Author by I'm not going to attempt.
Nedia Corafor.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Okay. Disabled, disinclined to marry, and more interested in writing than a lucrative career in medicine or law. Oh, sounds like all of us. Zelu has always felt like the outcast of her large Nigerian family. Then her life is upended at her sister's lavish Caribbean wedding when she's unceremoniously fired from her university job. And to add insult to injury, her most recent book is rejected by yet another publisher. With her career and dreams crushed in one fell swoop, she decides to write something just for herself. What comes out is nothing like the quiet literary novels that have peppered her unremarkable career. It's a far future epic where androids and AI wage war in the grown-over ruins of human civilization. She calls it Rusted Robots. When Zelu finds the courage to share her strange story, she does not realize that she's about to embark on a life-altering journey, one that will catapult her into literary stardom, but also perhaps obliterate everything her book was meant to be. From Chicago to Lagos to the outer reaches of space, Zelu's novel will change the future not only for humanity, but also for the robots who come next. It's a book within a book, basically. Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited for this one. I still have to buy it because I'm going to buy it from an independent bookstore. But I'm very excited. I love Nadia Korafor. I've read from her before, and I think she has a really interesting writing style. So I know that this one is different from her other works because her other works are all sci-fi, and this seems to be like a literary splash of sci-fi. So I'm very excited.
Yeah,
All right.
I thought it sounded pretty great. So
Yeah.
we'll do that next time.
Yep.
Yay! Okay, well, thank you all for watching tonight, watching in the future. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought. But anyways, thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Kelsey.
And thank you, everyone. I always forget to press end stream. Bye bye.